What's happening, guys? Welcome into another boxing breakdown and prediction show for this weekend's huge Saturday Night Fox PBC pay-per-view main event over in Las Vegas, Nevada, between bona fide Hall of Fame legend Manny Pacquiao as he takes on current WBA welterweight champion Yordenis Ugas, and what should be a really, really top-level fight on Saturday. So let's get into it now. Firstly, this obviously wasn't the fight intended for this weekend. That was originally going to be Pacquiao versus Errol Spence, which was a much bigger fight in the grand scheme of things, of course, as Spence is seen as one of the best, if not the best, at welterweight right now. Unfortunately, that fight fell through last week after Spence picked up a torn retina. But, for me personally, I'm really not all that disappointed. Yes, pretty much along with everyone else, really wanted to see Pacquiao versus Spence, obviously. But, if you're going to give me a stand-in opponent here, Yordenis Ugas is definitely up there in terms of quality. I do think, though, that a lot of the intrigue about the original fight against Errol Spence was to see if Manny Pacquiao potentially had one last great performance left in him, beating the unified champion, highly regarded like Spence is, who's on almost everyone's pound for pound list. And, if he was able to pull that off at the age of 42, it would have been absolutely like mythical stuff and, arguably elevate Pacquiao to being one of the greatest of all time. Saying that, though, no matter what happens on Saturday, win, lose, or draw, Pacquiao will already go down as one of the greatest of a generation. But, against Ugas, a guy far less well known than Errol Spence, he might not get that same level of recognition for a win here as he would have got against a guy like Spence. But, it's really not a whole lot less dangerous for him here. Ugas has just one loss over his last 13 fights. A loss that arguably shouldn't have stood, as in my opinion, he edged that fight against Sean Porter back in 2019. Ugas is a big welterweight as well. Uses frame and reach very well on the inside, and he can pop as well, especially that beautiful left hook he uses to the body. So, at these odds, Ugas going off anywhere from a plus 250 to a plus 300 right now, that does look a big price to me on a guy, as skilled and accomplished as Ugas is. And, look, we've seen as well where standing opponents can also really, really trouble the established fighter at short notice in these type of fights. And, that could well be the case here on Saturday as well. Vitaly Klitschko, we all remember, stepped on short notice against Lennox Lewis all those years ago when scheduled opponent Kirk Johnson pulled out with a chest injury. And, even more recently, Anthony Joshua versus Andy Ruiz, Ruiz stepped in on short notice after the original opponent, Jarrell Miller, got suspended for some failed drug tests. So it can be really difficult to readjust sometimes when you've prepared weeks and weeks for a particular opponent, a particular style, only then for the rug to get pulled at the last minute. And suddenly it's a brand new opponent facing you across the ring. Spence is a southpaw. Pacquiao's obviously spent some time bringing in guys and sparring that fit that kind of mold. And, now suddenly with 10 days notice, he's got a tricky orthodox fighter in front of him in the shape of Ugas. So, it's never a particularly easy position to be in when you've got that deep into preparation for a fight. And then, suddenly there's a switch in focus here. And, that may well come into play on Saturday night. Saying that, though, Manny Pacquiao, 26 years in the business, he's been breaking people's faces for as long as the Dallas Cowboys haven't won a Super Bowl, basically. So, it puts it into some kind of perspective there. He's faced every single style imaginable over those 26 years as well. So, Ugas's tricky technique shouldn't particularly phase him all that much on Saturday. But, for anyone expecting this to be an easy night's work against a standing opponent, I think they can think again, as Ugas is the real deal here and firmly looks as though he's ready to take his chance on Saturday night, in the build up to this fight. The one negative I will say for Ugas, however, is almost workman-like performances in there. He's a very, very high-level boxer, very technical. And as I said before, I do expect him to make life very difficult for Manny Pacquiao in there. But all that great work that Ugas does, it still doesn't exactly set the world alight in terms of the wow factor in there. He employs a really good jab in the ring, great range finder. He's also got that great left hook to the body, as we mentioned previously. And as a technical boxer, he reads opponents very well also, especially as they look to come inside on him. I thought he did a great job 2 years ago timing Sean Porter with that left hook because he was looking to jump in on the inside against him. And, potentially we could see a very similar thing play out here on Saturday night. That being said, we know how Manny likes to set up from the outside, utilising that ambush style of his, which he's so explosive in. And even at 42, he still looks in fantastic shape in training camp. We saw how explosive he is with the counter ambush against Keith Thurman 2 years ago as well, putting him down in that opening round. So, if Manny Pacquiao still has that same level of speed and suddenness, which we saw on display in his last fight, that's going to be very, very difficult to prepare for if you're Yordenis Ugas. As almost every fighter after the fact has stated Manny's speed and power, took them by surprise, even with a full training camp to prepare for it. I think because of that, Manny will start fast in this fight, pretty much like he did against Keith Thurman last time out. I think for the first 5 or 6 rounds, it's going to be very difficult for Ugas to start to time him jumping in with that straight left hand of his. But, at age 42, we saw this against Thurman as well. Manny did start to wilt down the stretch in that fight. And, this fight's 2 years on from that as well. So I think at some point, Manny will slow down here. And I can see Ugas starting to take over the center of the ring, start looking to time the Filipino legend more and more as the fight wears on, and generally make it as uncomfortable as he can for Pacquiao in there. I do see this fight going the distance. And unofficially, at least, I do expect it to be razor close as well. I think while Pacquiao may catch Ugas early here, potentially knock him down, Ugas has enough about him defensively, in my opinion, to go the distance here. And on the other side, unless Manny suddenly looks like a 42-year-old in there, I don't see Ugas being able to stop him either. Ultimately, though, while I do think it will be close, I just see Manny's flurries, those sudden bursts of activity he does, catching the judges' eyes here, similar to what we saw all those years ago, Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvin Hagler. That may well be enough for him to nick a few of these later rounds and get the decision here. The other major factor, of course, is, while Ugas is a great guy and on paper this is a fair fight, Manny is one of the most loved boxers of all time. And you can't not take that into account when you're looking to handicap this kind of fight. The attention he gets from fans. I've personally met him as well, and he really is one of the nicest, most humble guys in the sport. So I would imagine everyone in attendance for this fight, all the fans, all the media, pretty much everyone watching around the world will be rooting for Manny Pacquiao here, to finish his career on a high. And that's taking nothing away from Ugas, obviously. But, Manny is running for president of the Philippines next year. He stated this is likely his last fight. So, the emotion of all that history bubbling to the surface, 26 years of an absolutely electric Hall of Fame career might well sway some decisions here. And, when anything resemble a close fight, I just can't see Manny not getting his hand raised here and finishing that legendary career his on a high, if indeed this does end up being his last fight. I'm going to take Manny Pacquiao to win by decision here on Saturday night at plus 120. And what I do expect to be a really great fight over in Las Vegas this weekend. So that's Manny Pacquiao by decision, plus 120. That'll be the free play for this week. That'll wrap things up. As always, leave us your thoughts in the comment section below. You can also catch me over on Twitter at the SportsWolf83 and at my handicapper page, Kevin Dolan, over at WagerTalk. As always, thanks for listening. Till next time, Slán